Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Paul. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, sir. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. It is March.
It is March. Well, yes, it is. Spring is around the corner, and I'm so happy for that.
I don't
It's,
know. I know that we live in two different worlds
yep,
because your corner and my corner are very different.
yep,
I'm dealing. Last week we had a horrendous snowstorm hit
yeah,
us
yeah.
for multiple days. And then immediately it dropped to 40 below. But this is the strangest 40 below, Will, this that I've ever experienced in all my years of living up here in the state and city I was born in.
Yeah.
I've never experienced a 40 below that I was aware of. Okay, granted, it could have happened to where it is like 40 below at 6 a.m. By noon, it is warmed up to 25 below.
Mm,
By like 4 p.m., it's maybe 15 below, but then it drops again.
okay.
It is
Huh.
just it's
Yeah.
you're in the morning over the weekend, I was looking out the window and I'm like, I see the ice fog. It just looks cold. When it's that low of a temperature, you can look outside and you can see how cold it is. But then by the afternoon, you're like, oh, this is a beautiful winter day. It is a beautiful winter day.
Nice.
So it's just I'm living in very much. I mean, I'm glad we're talking about paradise because
Yep.
to some extent I feel like I am living a bizarre. It's been a
Yeah.
strange winter, and I know you all in the lower 48 have also experienced some
Hmm.
very strange weather this year.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you
but
could. Yeah. If well, I could be like President Baines and try to tell try to create a dome where we can control the weather or we can seed the weather or something like that. That's not what ended up like him though. You know, but I am glad we are talking about paradise, and I know we got delayed last week due to the crazy weather you're having in Alaska. But yeah, let's. But I'm ready to jump into our discussion if you are.
yeah, we're talking. We're gonna start with the second episode, Mayday. Xavier battles the elements and other threats as he follows a broadcast to Atlanta in search of his wife Terry. My question, where I want to start this conversation, Will, about this specific episode, is the flashback.
Yeah.
Why do you think the writers chose the initial meeting between Terry and Xavier to open up? And I mean, it's basically the B storyline throughout this episode, but why do you think they chose that moment of their initial meeting to kind of kick off the season for Xavier?
I think it reminds us of the stakes that he is why he is leaving the bunker. To remind us of the love story between. Well, it really showed the sort of origin story of Terry and Xavier because when we see them when we meet Terry in season one, it was sort of introduced the to get as a family unit because it was there was a thing going on at the school. Xavier was we saw Xavier that we know, the guy who has to be in control and everything. Terry was whenever they were meeting with the principal, she was the one who was more, I guess, more, more savvy, or maybe not savvy, but she was she where she was coming from, and she was very open and all that. So I think so we saw her in that state, but then we see them there in the room, and it really, I think, shows the how why that dynamic sort of got started. And we saw a side of Xavier where he's the this Xavier had game. Granted, it was a little bit corny after a while, but it was still game as far as wooing her. And I love the interactions between the two characters, uh, especially when Terry was like just because there's a cute guy in the other in my room, I have I have things and goals that I want to achieve, and it's not just getting married, but also I think frames why she stayed in Atlanta. Whenever well, even especially when Xavier was trying to tell her, look, things are coming. Of course, Kyle didn't give him the full story, but
Yeah.
it just really, it just for viewers who saw the show in the first season, it reminded us, about their dynamics, and it really explains like why we saw the Teri, once they have been married for many years in that dynamic. But then we see the seeds and the roots of that with this introduction, with the two of them in the hospital room.
Yeah, I don't think they were different from the meaning of the hospital
Yeah,
to where we saw them days before
mm-hmm.
the day
Yeah,
or weeks, however long in between that was. More of a
yeah,
present version of them.
yeah,
Um, but and I think it had way more to do with Teri than it did have to do with Xavier,
mm-hmm.
just because. And granted, we all know this, and I'm just gonna repeat it again because I bring it up anytime we talk Paradise. Dan Fogelman and Sterling K. Brown. I watched This Is Us. His game that you speak of, that's just Sterling K. Brown. Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still listen to the That Was Us podcast. So I have a pretty good grasp as to who Sterling K. Brown, like the public persona he presents.
mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, yep, he just went from Xavier off to Sterling K. Brown has
Yep,
entered the building to turn up the heat.
yep,
So but I agree that like in regards to Teri, I thought the things that stuck out, one you've already mentioned in terms of e- even then she was very much like, you're hot and I would totally go for it. However, you ain't going to get in my way. And
mm-hmm.
it just echoed the later on version where even after she goes for it, they do get together, they have kids, she has that. There's still a part of her that has clearly prioritized that ambition she has for her career above, which arguably is different than what Xavier has presented. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm curious how that will be explored in terms of like survival and whenever we do get them back together, just maybe some of the animosity between them
Mm-hmm.
about that kind of prioritization, and then also their clear love
Yeah,
um, for one another. Like that is there. Granted, we've only seen it mainly from Xavier, so
that's true.
as we start to get to know and more understand Teri, um, it will come more. I think they're planning kind of in a way a character redemption. But the
Yeah,
other thing that stuck out to me was her scoliosis.
yes,
I
yes,
I was very surprised by that. I and then the temporary blindness that occurred. I and I think that's also again leads into her love for science and her
mm-hmm.
ambition in that field. So I thought that was a very telling sign, somebody who's clearly broken, which I kind of go back to the first episode and Annie's story and her
Yeah,
mom,
mm-hmm.
because her mom, we also see a doctor, very smart, but then ultimately as a mother is seen as where her daughter steps up at a very early age to be caretaker.
Yep,
So we're now seeing two women who have that ambition, and more so the smarts to follow up that ambition, but are also carrying this weight of illness and disease.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point too, and also I think it also, for me, helps frame sort of Xavier as well, as far as his his protective streak or his nurture. Well, maybe I guess nurturing. I mean, he's whenever we see him in the room there with Terry, at first, when I first watched the episode, I have to say I was wondering, was this just a Fogelman, parallel thing? Because I want to say in episode two of the first season, I think that was when Sinatra had, when their son ended up in the hospital too,
Uh-huh.
and 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 so it, part of it was a sort of like, okay, how whenever our central characters are impacted by a situation like this, where someone they care for, in Sinatra's case, her son, in Xavier's case, he was at that point, obviously he and Terry had just met, but it was he was building feelings for her. I mean, and how he handled her illness there in the hospital. Um, really, we see that, we see we it shows how it's what he's doing now as far as going to literally, going to leave the safety of the bunker, leaving his kids and everything, really shows like the depths of his um, you know, how what he will do to for the people that he cares about. And so, in a positive way. And then, of course, Sinatra's the other side of the coin, where you know she also will go to the ends of the earth to do things too, but maybe her means of doing so end up hurting people, whereas Xavier's always trying to figure out a way to like trust people, and does it from a place of like good parts of humanity versus the negative parts of it. So
So if anybody's listened to our discussions about or new to listening to our discussions about Paradise, this is a reminder that Will hates Sinatra. Okay. So I have to take up the platform of always defending Sinatra because Will just does not like her. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I'll
Because
be balanced. I'll be balanced.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think you will be balanced, but we'll see. We're not even at the episode where she comes back and you're already talking about her.
Yeah, true, true.
I mean, I think Jane is a bigger villain than Sinatra, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know with Xavier, the more you were talking about it and the attributes, the more I think it plays into later episodes in terms of what
Yeah,
his relationship with Annie, because and this is Xavier. I mean, at the end of the day, just like at the end of the day, Terry's a scientist and a
mhm,
researcher. Xavier's a bodyguard.
yeah,
So we have seen him now in several situations between season 1 and up to this episode for not just people he cares about, but also strangers and the
mhm,
president who
yeah,
he
yeah,
does form a like he he is constantly in these situations where he can't necessarily do anything to stop it. Like he
right,
can't heal Terry, he can't make guarantee, but he knows how to be there,
mhm,
and he knows presence alone is comforting. He knows that just doing little things goes a long way when people are in a state of crisis,
yeah,
whether it's a medical crisis or just a decision making crisis,
yeah,
or in need of some form of protection against a potential threat.
yeah,
Like he can do that. He can't pull the button or make the decisions, or a lot of the times it's always out of his hands, whether
yeah,
he it's interesting because I think we might just overuse this idea that he wants control
yeah,
when the reality is, given the situations he finds himself in and his abilities in those, he's just constantly in a state of not having any control,
Yeah, yeah,
but still trying to persevere
yes,
and find the good at the end of the day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think especially like, and I think it was a very good framing device to use the flashback of Terry, and also, and while you're talking about Xavier, finding himself in these situations, I couldn't help but think about the kids in
yeah,
this episode.
the Lost
Um,
Boys.
the loss, yeah, yeah. Because again, it's that, you said the bodyguard,
Hmm.
and like we were saying with Annie and Terry in this episode, he is by his nature a protector,
Hmm.
and so like you were saying, even in this situation, I think I like the way they used it. They used these kids that he found in Arkansas as a way to, just again remind us of who this man is. And even though, yes, he has this mission that he's trying to achieve, but at the same time, he's like, these kids are out here. Even though my knee is like jacked up, I still got to figure out a way to like help them. And well, plus he was just trying to get his stuff back too. But I mean, but
Well, they also protected him. Like
yeah,
he needed them as much as they needed
yeah,
him.
hmm,
Unfortunately, though, they weren't going to stick around
right,
because they are children. And I had so many questions for those kids. I'm sure we all did. I like I kind of get annoyed with the simple explanation. Yeah, like all of our parents and our coaches, they all died, and I'm like, okay, but where's the explanation for how you survived? Because from what we see in the first episode, it's not day one,
yeah,
everyone after everything happens, like all of a sudden you wake up and like the world's ended, but you can just go about your way. No, there was months of
hmm,
and years of survival because I forget the exact day, but it was a while before Annie could even step outside
yeah,
and see daylight.
yes,
So yeah, so I just that kind of annoyed me, and I will be honest, with this episode, I was more into the flashback than I was into the
hmm,
present, just because I was like, "Okay, I know at the end of this episode, you we're gonna start with where we left off at the end of episode 1," so
yeah,
I was like, "Okay."
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm there with you too. I mean, I was more engaged with the Terry and Xavier story, but I guess with the kids though, I mean, I think it was. I also did have questions as far as like where, I guess the parents, maybe some of them did survive the day,
Mhm,
but they lingered, and maybe these kids, they're just they literally, like you said, they're just survivors, and you know maybe they have had help along the way, like the Xaviers and stuff, but then they get what they need, and then they move on to the next, move on to the next thing, and trying to avoid it. And maybe that's why the guy that Xavier killed was like part of the people taken advantage of. But also, I think it just reinforces, just how dangerous the outside world is, with respect to the bunker, and how people just how people will react, because you have the saviors of the world, but then you have the guy who was, who that was ready to do something bad to these kids. So
well, there's different factions. I
yeah,
mean, and we see this with like shows like The Last of Us.
right,
You travel and you start to encounter different communities, and these different communities have different rules and are very territorial, and have clearly survived, but because of the rules and what they've put, and some have gone to extremes that others have had not to, based on resources and all of that.
Right.
You see that in The Walking Dead as well. So actually, in comparison to those shows,
Yeah.
so far Paradise has been very tame.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. I mean,
For sure.
stuff. It has been, and I do appreciate how they do some. You know, they do go into those tropes, but they also smartly pivot when they need to.
Yeah. Um, Anything else you want to say about this episode that doesn't get you into a theory spiral?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, just a couple, just a one, one thing. Well, one thing obviously, Xavier was like flying, and of course there was the nosebleed, which will be a theme that that I'll save the theory spiraling for later, but I did just want to put a pin in it for now.
Yeah. All right. The third episode, Another Day in Paradise. Sinatra wakes up to discover a new paradigm in the bunker and takes steps to safeguard its biggest secret. This is also what I sum up to be the episode in which Baines dies.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Robinson is gonna be set up to take the fall because she she realizes too late how much of a threat Jane really is.
Hmm.
Um, so this has another flashback. Um, I'm kind of getting reminded of how much Fogelman likes his flashbacks to subside with the present day. We didn't get that in the first episode, but we're back to that very familiar territory where two timelines interweave and overlap in
Hmm.
terms of ideas, and we see in this flashback somebody I was not expecting to see in season two. I will admit, I was not expecting to see him, but he's here, and I will say we've now seen him in two episodes, and I'm like, Billy, it's great. It's great. It's great
Yep.
to see you.
Yep.
And I will admit, in this episode, I was like, huh, I wonder if we're gonna see Cal. And this is episode three, we saw Cal. So, or
Yeah.
episode four, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really this flashback is interesting as we learn more about the bunker itself
Hmm.
and Alex. We learn about Alex
Yep.
all through Susanna and Billy, which the first we find out essentially Cal's father introduces Billy to Suzanne. That's what's
Samantha.
implied.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Samantha.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think I wrote Susanna and yeah. So some Cal's father introduces Billy to Samantha. And then and because she needs a certain technology,
Hmm.
i.e. Alex,
Yep.
um in order for this bunker, because part of this flashback is also the fact that what we just watched in episode 1 through Annie's eyes was technically act 1 of a 2 if not a 3-act play
Yeah.
of the world ending.
Yeah.
So and how really act 1 is a paper cut in comparison to act 2.
Yeah.
So then it kind of leads, and it's implied whatever this technology that Samantha needs is going to help prevent or reverse act 2 in a way. Um, so so yeah, we Will, why don't you step in and
Yeah.
talk about this flashback?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are a couple of things, yeah, with the whole Venus syndrome that you were talking about, with going back to that fateful conference that Sinatra and
Mhm,
Cal were at, and and her talking with Doctor Lounge, or where he was the one that talked about the Cascadia and
mhm,
everything, and Devine, like you said, perfect, perfect. analogy there, calling it a paper cut, because whenever he described how things were going to end up, it definitely you know spot made like you said, I think that the 1,000 people that were left, or the people that were left, you know you were wishing you were dead, that you got taken out with the first with when things ended the first time. But um with Billy, I'm glad Billy was one of my MVPs of season one.
Hmm.
And I'm so glad. I mean, one, John Beavers is just just very magnetic as an actor. I mean, all these folks on the show are really, but I'm glad he was back. Um, and I like the way that they interwove, uh, Billy, how he was fucking with Sinatra on the park bench. Because she, it was like clearly he's a professional hitman. We know that, and of course, with thinking back to their interactions in season one, now we're getting more details as far as how he ended up in the bunker. And but
Well, we
also,
knew kind of how. I mean, we
we
knew
kind of
what he
knew,
did in the
yeah,
bunker.
but
So,
we
like,
understand. Yeah, but we understand now. I guess we see the just like we saw the, I guess, the origin story for Terry and
yeah,
Xavier. We get the origin story for Samantha and Billy, which was cool. I mean, and also bigger.
it was cool. I think in terms of what happens in present day,
Yeah.
I want the origin story between Jane and Samantha.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. Uh, yeah, we'll definitely get there, and especially how the code word, which which was, I need a breath mint. Man,
Yeah.
yeah. That was that was the moment where I like pointed at the screen. I was like, "Damn you, Fogelman! I like the way you tell stories."
Yeah, I
Yeah,
that was a clever thing to do
yeah,
for a few different reasons.
yeah,
I it's funny as you were talking about Billy.
yeah.
And again, I am taking up the what I have to do in the defending of Susanna. Okay. So Samantha, whatever.
Yeah.
Sinatra. I'm just gonna call her
Call her
Sinatra
Sinatra.
as
Yeah,
much as
yeah,
possible because
yeah.
now that's like gonna happen every single time I talk to her. I
Mm,
talk about her. So Sinatra actually does appear so different in this flashback
mm,
because she clearly he's only able to fuck with her because she clearly has never hired anybody to kill someone before. Like,
yeah,
this isn't what she does.
yeah.
So this is foreign territory, which is and you can tell that that has changed her
Mm,
based on this Sinatra who we've known since season 1.
yeah.
It's a very different person, and not only for all of her involvement with the bunker, but now we're also seeing like more of the dirty side of the dealings that she specifically had to do to secure the bunker, but also other stuff
Mm,
along the way in terms of whatever's next to come. Um, so she seems so frail in those moments. The more I think about it, the best comparison I can make, and granted, acting wise and story wise, it's kind of a stretch, but really it's similar to if you were to go back and watch the first episode of Breaking Bad
mm,
and
mm,
then watch him by the end of the series, that transformation. Um, because once you cross lines, you really do change as a person.
yeah.
Or your moral scope changes. Um, but what are you gonna talk about the nosebleed in the
Oh,
past?
yeah. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. Yeah, I mean, we could, yeah, since you bring it up, yeah, I mean, we do have, of course, since we're on the storyline with Sinatra, one of the things we learn is, she hires Billy to take out, Henry Miller, who,
Mhm.
because going back to the conversation that she had and the whole idea with the bunker, and she hired Billy. We learned that this the Dr. Miller is a quantum physicist. He has
Mhm.
his quantum company, his quantum research, and the big line that came from the Dr. Luge was, there's one thing that can fix this, and you can't even buy it. It's time.
Right.
So, so when you factor all those things in there, and then the Billy's nosebleed after he, assassinates Miller, um, and this is where we start to get into the theory spiral as far as and also going back to episode 1 too with Link, when he had that dilation moment, whenever he was outside Annie's door, and also Xavier having, whenever he was, you know, I think he had a flashback. I want to say in episode 2 too, with even though he hadn't met Link at this point.
Oh
Um,
yeah, they definitely
yeah,
they were teasing the flashbacks
yeah,
all
um,
because they
so
they did a reveal
mhm,
like all of a sudden it's his face. I know that guy's the back of that guy's head, so
yeah, yeah,
I, I think it
yeah,
was pretty
yeah,
obvious who that
yeah,
was.
right. And then linking it all together with Billy, with Miller just basically like, look, the one person who can like
Well,
save us
that
all.
wasn't a surprise to you, was it?
No, it wasn't a surprise. It was more no, no. I mean, it was telegraphed for
Yeah,
miles but
yeah.
it was just a nice reveal. It was an effective reveal when Link shows up, and it just again tying all these various threads together. I just really like the way it just sort of played out.
I I
Yeah.
didn't like it.
Mm,
I because it was too telegraphed for me. It
mm,
was way too telegraphed for me. I get the sentiment and everything, but I was like it fell flat for me
mm,
because I with that kind of thing, I want
yeah.
it to be more subtle, like
Hmm.
the breath mint line that
Yeah.
gets played out in present day.
Right.
I want things not to be like, okay, let me briefly tell you about this guy who's practically a son to me and he's really, really smart.
Yeah.
And then later, oh, he's coming and it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
with that, I don't know. Like I said, it fell flat for me if I'm being perfectly honest. But I can understand why it was there and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It was that totally. I get why it fell flat. I mean, it totally was a convenience, and it was like I said too. I agree, it was telegraphed, but it served the purpose of just furthering things along, and why all these little flashbacks and nosebleeds and everything are sort of stacking on top of one another, as we all end up we're all going to end up back in Colorado, with all these characters, converging, uh, you know,
Well,
in the
some, not
some,
all. Some of them
not
are
all.
dead.
Yeah, some of them are dead. Yeah,
Like Henry
like like Henry and
and
President
Alex.
Bean and Alex. Yeah, and Alex. But I guess that's the thing too. With this whole thing, Alex. I mean, I know we talked about it some last week. Is it a person, or is it or is Alex a thing? Because that was the other thing as far as like President Bain you know, with Sinatra's plans. He was like trying to manipulate the weather, and
Yeah, it's
learn and
definitely a thing.
yeah,
It's what they call the
mm,
program. Whatever
yeah,
research he was doing with
yeah,
Link, they they named it Alex.
yeah,
And I was thinking that after episode 1, after our discussion, I was like,
mm,
"Damn it, I should have brought up the fact that it's probably an acronym. They're probably
yeah,
doing a misdirect with
mm,
having it be named Alex, so
yeah,
it actually turns out to be more of like a system and
yeah,
an acronym than an actual person." But
right.
they did the very Fogelman thing. Yeah, well, yeah, it was kind of a person at one point. It's
At one
named
point,
after a person, a very
yeah,
important person
yeah, yeah,
who's also, again, another sick. And also, this is now 3 sick women I've talked about, and
Mhm.
we're not even at episode 4 where another one comes in. Dan, what are you doing to women in this show?
It's just a very, I will say that, yeah, I mean, I know we were just talking a few minutes earlier about it's not like last, there's, at least with the apocalyptic stuff, um, they are tame, but man, you're right. There is a recurring theme, but to that point though, at least he is killing some men off too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's either you're a sick person or a sick female, or you're Jane,
yeah,
who
yeah,
who is a psychopath apparently, and is
yeah,
definitely, for me. I think she is more of a villain than, because we already have seen her confront Sinatra
mhm,
at the end of the first season. I mean, she does shoot her,
yep,
and now they're in they have such an interesting dynamic now. And so now that we're talking about present day, we've
yep,
already touched basically on the banes of it all.
mhm,
So what the parallel that occurs here when we go back to season 1 is now we're seeing Sinatra undergo the same lie detector test that we watched Xavier undergo in the first
yep,
season.
yep,
And it was very well done, because
mhm,
just like during Xavier's, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you're either a really good liar. I can't tell. They're
yeah,
like pieces I can't tell necessarily if she really can't remember, or if she's faking it to an extent, because it's been a month. They
yeah,
made it clear that she has been in a coma for a month. There was trauma. I
mhm,
mean, she got hurt bad.
yeah,
So I don't think you wake up the next day and be like, okay, where were we?
yeah, yeah,
I don't think you do that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I can buy into a certain extent, but she definitely knows. She definitely did not forget about Jane.
nope, she did not,
It
she
did
did not,
not forget about Jane,
yeah,
and is definitely playing a game with Jane right now, or not, maybe not even playing a game, because whatever game that she's in is not by her choosing. This
no,
is Jane's game, and I'm very curious about some of Jane's motivations and where
mhm,
she comes from. Um, but I thought that scene was very well done, and that scene, of course, ends with the breath mint line
yep,
that just comes out of nowhere. Like,
yes,
you think of it as a joke,
yep,
and it's
yep,
not until the flashback where you hear Billy, like, say, "Job's been done. Next time, to make it easy, like, don't give me an explanation, just tell me that they need a breath mint."
yep,
And that's what she did. And I like how it's also not like they didn't do a flashback to
nope,
that
nope,
scene or moment. As a viewer, you just remember that having, because it kind of, there was a kind of a pause there,
mhm,
but you didn't think anything of it because of he
yeah.
probably really did have nasty breath. I don't
Yeah,
know. He was
exactly. Yeah. I
screaming
mean,
very closely.
speaking of close quarter, I mean, that's truly, truly when, like you said, I mean, whenever she said that in that scene and after the polygraph, I was like, that was a needle drop joke. I was just like, okay, I see what you're doing there. And then, like I said earlier, it's just like whenever we had the moment on the bench, it just like, that was good. That was
Yeah.
like that was really good. That was a good thing there they did there. But also, with speaking of the polygraph, so we've seen now two people um, defeat that machine,
Hmm.
Xavier and now Samantha. So it gets to the large. I begin to wonder, like we know Dr. Tharabi was the sociologist or whatever behind picking out all these people to live, help
Hmm.
pick people live in this thing, and couple things. One is like how she knows Sinatra very very well because of all the trauma that we discussed earlier about Sinatra losing her kid, and she was her therapist and all kind of stuff. But I do wonder. um, with Sinatra and Xavier, basically just having the right skills, or maybe like you said earlier, Sinatra just had rehearsed the things enough in her head that she just basically convinced herself and knew how to control her physiological reflexes or whatever, not to like give off that she was lying. But the other thing too is, thinking about Baines and looking at uh, the sort of the the power structure there in the bunker, because at the end of the day, you know the presidents, whether it was Cal, whether it was Bain, in a lot of situations, a lot of it is just they were just figureheads. But I think one thing that we see with Bain in this episode is, and it gets into a little bit of the class thing that we haven't really touched on much with this show, but it is there as far as like these are all billionaires. A lot of these are billionaires who were able to find buy their way into this bunker. Bain was a former, like, I guess we learned he was a former governor. And so he thinks he's like very politically, very savvy or whatever. But at the end of the day, Sam is still the one who is really, two steps ahead of them. And you're right. As far as Jane, I'm really, really very curious now. Like, who's playing who between Sam and Jane? Because that power dynamic there just goes back and forth, and I'm just like, well, maybe, I'm like, now I'm coming to your side, Sarah. That maybe Jane
Well,
is
she's just a wild
the
card.
mastermind. Yeah, yeah,
She's a wild card that has duped
yeah,
so far all of our lead characters, and
yeah,
she's even a been able to take on Sinatra. So
yeah,
like at least with Sinatra, we understand her and we
yeah,
understand her motivations, and we've seen more about how she became the person we're seeing in present day. With Jane, she's still an enigma
mhm,
that is just being carefully waiting in the shadows.
yeah,
And she's also, not only is she duping people, but she's framing. I mean, she took out Billy in the first season, much to
yep,
our dismay. And then now I love that she killed Baines. He
yep,
needed to go, but I don't appreciate the framing of Robinson.
right,
Um, but and it's not just because I like Robinson and she's a quote unquote good guy, but it's more of the fact that I expected Robinson to be smarter.
hmm,
And that's what I don't like to see, where to allow the quote unquote bad guy to make a move, then you have to lower the intellect of your heroes, of your
yeah,
protagonists. And I'm like, come on. It's been how long since Billy died, and we didn't do a closer look, and it just felt very convenient of all of a sudden Robinson is starting to look closer into Jane, or giving like the eyebrow to
yeah,
her more like, okay. I think Robinson would have been doing that a bit earlier. It's been more a month or more since Xavier has been out of the bunker.
yeah,
So, and she's also, it's it's more of an issue right now with Robinson being framed because of the implications for Xavier's kids,
hmm,
who we also see in this episode. And we see that the Presley and Jeremy train is still going.
yeah, it is.
James did throw away a note, but he quickly told the truth.
Right.
However, Jeremy is also, he is a very much like a Link and wants to blow the place up or
Yep.
blow the door open. So he turned himself in, and we see that he did it purposely, because earlier in the episode, the big architect of the bunker is also
Yep.
thrown into bunker jail
Yep. Yep.
and bunker basement.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just um moving forward in the bunker, and then that brings us to episode 4, A Holy Charge, um where Xavier and Annie travel to Atlanta and contrast life in this new world and the one he left behind in the bunker. Um, Boy, just when you thought we were done with birth scenes, Will, just
Yeah.
when you thought we were out, they did it. We find ourselves with another one, and this one was a preeclampsia. I was surprised that Annie died, just because this is the thing about me. When you cast well-known actors for roles, I don't really expect them to be killed off right away. So the fact that Shailene Woodley was cast,
Hmm.
and I'm like, oh, she's dying in episode 3. Okay, okay, or episode 4.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. Um, I like it. I find it. I have to say this now,
Yeah. Go ahead.
um, because just the final scene of Xavier on a horse, swaddling a white baby. I was
Yeah.
just like, I was just like, this is beautiful,
Yeah.
considering he spent 6 years as the adopted black child of white people. on This Is Us. I feel like we've come full circle.
We have come full circle for sure.
So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I just, that was initially, as soon as I saw that frame, I was like,
Yeah.
that's the first thought that went in my head.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh man.
yeah.
But what were some of your takeaways about this episode and the tragedy that ultimately befalls Annie?
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking, they introduced Annie in episode 1, and we see her just a little bit there in 2. Don't think at all in 3, and then they take her away right when. But but it's paradise, so I'm just like, we're gonna see Annie again, right? At some point, we have to,
Oh,
you know,
flashbacks are
flashbacks. Yeah,
happening
yeah.
for
So
sure. She's a
yeah,
pivotal
but
character for sure this
yeah,
season, but
yeah. But I will, yeah. But I will say, I mean, this was, I did get very, I'll admit it. I mean, I did get a little emotional watching all of that go down, as far as her death. Um, because whenever they set it up, whenever she was, when they were still at Graceland, and she was like, taking her her blood pressure,
mhm,
and I was just like, mm, it was high. So my mind went there because I'm a parent. So and we've all we've had family and friends who have have dealt with these types of things. Um, and it's something, and I did think about our discussion last week a little bit too, where when we do find out that she's pregnant, and um, how they're going to deal with that in a world now where as Cal said in the first season, I'm taking things back to the Stone Ages in many sense, because technology is going to get wiped out because of the EMP.
mhm,
So 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 with that, with what was going on with Annie, excuse me, and then you juxtapose that with what was going on in the bunker in the flashback, with the birth.
mhm.
It really, going back to what I was saying a little bit earlier about a little bit about the class, but also just a little bit about just really it was a good narrative framing device for me to see, like, you know how how the first birth in the bunker, and then and then we see how, I mean, I don't think Annie's child was probably the first one born post the
Oh,
day
no.
with the outside world, but we are seeing the the impact. We're seeing a story about a situation like this happening, and it just gets into infant mortality and mother. I just couldn't help but think, like, if Annie had been in the bunker, this, she probably would. She would still be with the, with us today, and it was one of the thoughts I had. But also, I think it was just, seeing how Annie, the evolution of Annie from where we first, where we met her, where she, like you mentioned earlier, like she and Xavier, taking care of people, like Annie taking care of her mother, um,
Mhm.
and taking care of, and then later taking care of Xavier, and then now she's in a place where she needs help, but because of what all has happened, both in her past and present, she doesn't trust people. And and seeing in this episode how, her relationship evolves with Xavier, and coming out of the shell, and even as they're, like, coming across that family,
Mhm.
when they're on the walk, and
Yeah.
it's like, just keep on, don't look at them. Xavier is like, nods at them and stuff, and it just really, I just this was just a d- damn good hour of television in so many ways. It just has so many different levels that we can, we'll touch on. But those were some of about just dropping stream of consciousness of thoughts about this episode.
So you brought up the parallelism to the birth in the bunker. I thought for sure the birth in the bunker, ironically, the kid was going to die
Mm,
of that because there was they did have to go to C-section.
yeah,
And just the way they transitioned, like from the line, when was the last time you seen a pregnant lady?
yeah, yeah.
Into that, there was an ominous feeling about it. So I
Mm,
thought
mm,
that, like,
yeah.
it would have been interesting, not to say that like this episode wasn't interesting, but
No, no, I understand.
if that for some, even with the resources, because I ironically had a discussion today with somebody I worked with, and I don't have kids. And as a female, I know I have the ability to potentially carry children, and I will tell you right now, it scares the shit out of me. I don't care. And I live in a world with technology, and there's nurses and hospitals, and I live in post the day world. It
Yeah,
still scares me. There's still high risk and there's still
mm,
potential, even with all of that.
yeah,
And then if you look at the politics of the world today,
yeah.
like it's still, do you want to bring someone into this world?
Right.
So it's, I think, I think it's a very interesting conversation of, and I think in his very Xavier like way, he was trying to explain there's never a good time to bring a child into the world.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, we get it. This is
yeah,
basically bringing them into a post-apocalyptic world, but at the end of the day, as a parent, when you get that gift, you're going to want them in the world, whether it's stone age or in the 21st century.
yeah,
You just, you don't really get to decide that. But you, at least you just accept the gift that you are
mm,
given. And unfortunately, she was able to bring her kid into the world. She just is not able to watch it unfold.
yeah.
Um, so she leaves it with Xavier,
Yeah.
which, not a bad choice. Not a
No,
bad choice to have left that. I think there will be some very interesting fatherly, I don't know if I trust you link moments ahead. When the white father comes, but um
baby daddy, yeah, I love that.
yeah.
Baby daddy, yeah, but but also just tying it, again, just tying all the threads back together, and the ID card, and with Link, and yeah, I mean, it's
Well,
you
that's
know
is this the first time we've seen Xavier actually really withhold information because he never tells
Yeah.
her that he 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 tells her about his dreams that feel like
Right.
memories of
Right.
what has not yet occurred.
Right. They
But
do have these.
he does not explicitly say, and it just so happens in these I see this person who's on
Yeah.
this ID card.
Exactly. Yeah. He did not. He did not. Yeah. That. Yeah. I mean. Yeah. Because he did not share that, or his last name or anything like that. Whenever Xavier and George were standing there at the, when they were putting the tombstone up. I mean, that. Yeah. There were some pieces that they both withheld. I mean, like Annie didn't tell about the preeclampsia. I mean, so there was, um, there's, they opened
Well,
up.
she was afraid that she wasn't gonna be he wouldn't take her,
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
I'm surprised he even took her at all considering how pregnant she was.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I go I'm so I didn't really track that kind of like, "Yeah, this is a great idea. You're clearly about to have a kid, and we're gonna go find my wife."
Yeah, I did think that too because I was like, okay, now that her belly's looking a little, she's looking like things have dropped. So
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah. So whenever she was outside there and and her water breaks and stuff, I was like, oh boy, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's,
yeah, but
but what?
yeah, but also, but getting back to the trust, the trust of it all, whenever I mean, part of me was just like when Xavier went to the house when he just went out to a sprint. Well, a couple of things. One, to your point about why do you take her on this journey whenever clearly she's very pregnant, can go any day now. Um, so I did wonder, wonder where his head was, um, but yeah, but whenever they do encounter, they get to the Waffle Barn. I did like the scenes there with Xavier being showing how to swaddle and all these things, and I was just like, now Annie was a med student, but but gets to your point too about just the you know y- the the unexpected nature of being a parent and all the joys and scares and everything that comes with it. So I think that's what just makes this episode so effective because it just has so many levels to it beyond just the fact that they're off to Atlanta and
I
meet up
think
with
that,
all the people.
the most interesting conversation that happens is actually not between Xavier and Annie. It's
Mhm.
between Xavier and the I don't even know if we get her
Oh,
name.
the midwife.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, yeah, the midwife. I don't. We don't really. There's a few midwives, but the science teacher. She
yeah,
was a
the
science
science teacher.
teacher.
Yeah, yeah, she was.
Yeah, just because it was a good. It didn't feel cliche. It felt like a much more mature conversation
Yeah.
between two two people who have lived a long life, um, pre the day,
Hmm.
and then who have had very different experiences through the day, but, post the day, but have also found, like, some strength and bringing out different things in them after going through such a traumatic experience and then the survival of it all. I don't know, there was just something about the way that conversation
Yeah.
unfolded that it felt in hindsight when I look at a lot of the conversations between Annie and Xavier, he very much treats her like a daughter.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
very much uh, views her not as necessarily an equal is a strong word, but as someone who he has to take care of
Hmm.
and not someone he can necessarily even learn from.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I really like that conversation, and
I
then
did too.
that line that she has in terms of, um, the sins of the parents.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought I wrote it down, but I guess I didn't. I mean, I do know like the big quote of this episode is babies are built to survive.
Yeah.
Dan, you don't need to repeat it 5 million times.
Yeah. I
That's
thought you were
the
gonna
only
go.
thing.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna go with the we're all looking for great changes, great love, and great promises. It's a holy charge. I mean, that was
Eh,
the other thing that was
that was
that was
also
on
very
the nose.
cliche for me.
That
I was
that
like,
was on the nose.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know. Sometimes they just get too on the nose for me.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Especially when
oh,
Annie.
here it is.
Yeah.
We all forget how close we are in time,
Mm,
which is another thing.
yep.
Take a shot anytime time is mentioned in
Yep.
these episodes. How quickly our sins become our children's burdens, and I thought that was like our sins become our children's burdens. And I know we haven't spent a lot of time with him, but I immediately think about the relationship between Cal and Jeremy.
Yes.
This is immediately where we go. So, and um and which just takes me back to the first season and that
Mm,
episode with the grandfather, son,
mm,
father.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
woo,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
woo. Yeah, shivers just thinking about that one.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. And you haven't done a rewatch, so for you to like remember that scene, just shows how powerful that was.
mhm, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and not only in the flashback do we see Cal welcome the first bunker baby,
Hmm.
but we also see Sinatra, who again continues to allude to a plan of sorts, a bigger
Yep.
plan than we're currently aware of, where she promises Bunker Baby, aka Calvin, and she says, "I swear, Calvin, I have a plan for you, for all of us. Someday you'll see real stars."
Yep.
And so at this point in the conversation, I give it off to Will because he has been sitting on probably a 5 to 10 minute
No.
theory
No.
spiral.
No. No. I think well basically I hit it earlier with the nosebleeds, but I mean clearly, I mean I think the popular theory that's out there and you know and is she's building some type of time machine of some sort, but given the quantum physics of it all, is it it could be that it could be some some weather manipulator or some device uh, that that they're constructing clearly it's something like that because it is siphoning off a lot of energy from the
Mhm,
bunker, so it is but one of the things too with going back to the second episode, I was wondering, so before I even thought about the time travel theories and stuff, when Xavier
mhm,
had the nosebleed while he was flying the plane, when he was going through the storm, I was wondering if it was like, you know, something, maybe it was like radiation sickness or some nuclear, you know, weather because of just, where we were at that
mhm.
moment. But I guess, I mean, if it, but I guess it could have coincided with the moment where that Link had there with Annie at the house, that there was some like time warp or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I guess I
What?
guess the
I'm
hmm?
not I'm not tracking that.
Yeah, remember when Annie and Guy when Link Geiger had come to Link to say, "Hey, we gotta go."
Mhm.
Um, but I guess the
And
weather
it
was so
seemed like
bad.
he had a really bad migraine
Yeah, he had a really
at
bad
his
migraine.
summer? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
now I know what you're talking about.
yeah, it was like the scene got all distorted and stuff. So I got to go back and watch episode 2 to see like in the moment where Xavier has his nosebleed in the plane, if things get distorted like that, to like show maybe that like the device was like doing this, time manipulation thing. I mean, we clearly know that there's something there because Xavier is having the flashback. He's having the visions of Link of them meeting at some point, even though they haven't physically met before he even saw
Right, right,
his
right.
face in the ID. So yeah, so I
And
know that.
Link is
Yeah,
also having visions of Xavier.
yeah,
They're both, and there's a line in this episode about people, complete strangers, being tied together through time. It's in the note that Annie leaves
yeah, yeah,
her child.
for her child.
So, so it,
So yeah,
yeah.
so I think the prevailing theory of a time, some type of time manipulation is there, and also just you know, clearly Sinatra, with her line here at the end of this episode with the plan, and thinking back to episode 3 with her conversation with Dr. Luge, and the one thing you can't buy is time. So yeah, I mean all the breadcrumbs are there, but it's sort of but thinking back to the season 1 with the librarian, I mean, uh, who ends up being the person who murdered Cal. I mean, all these references to time could be just one big misdirect, and it could be something else completely different.
Like, I go back and forth on it.
Yeah,
Because it very well could be a misdirect. I don't like this idea that it's gonna be we're building a time machine.
I don't either.
I also don't like the idea of specifically to go back in time so she
Hmm.
can save her kid.
Right.
That is no, no, no. The only way I accept it is if it's to actually go forward,
Hmm.
because I feel like it's kind of stepped up, it's kind of set
Yeah.
up to go backwards. But it's too
Oh,
far-fetched for me.
now
I
that you
like the
mention it.
idea of, well, if there's enough time, we can wade out whatever this act 2 is.
Hmm.
But you just had an idea.
No, no. When you said about the going forward,
Mhm.
I thought I just happened to think about something that we talked about earlier with Kyle saying taking things back to the Stone Age as far as what we
Mhm.
were talking about the medical. So maybe that is what it is. Maybe you're hitting on it. It's not that we're going backwards in time. It's actually going forward in time.
Yeah, because she's talking to this baby.
Hmm.
The way she talks about it, it's it's more I don't think she's looking back.
Hmm.
I don't think that. I think it's more about future and
Yeah.
trying to get a civilization to get past whatever this act 2 is in a way. Um,
Yep. Yeah.
but why Link is so crucial has yet to really be explained or seen. I mean, we still got half of the season left,
Yeah.
um, to tell, like, the complete story, for sure. But, I'm glad to hear that you're on my side on this, that we don't want a time machine and to go backwards.
Yeah.
I will say that I'm surprised you haven't brought this up, but then again, you don't like this character, so maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Um, Time has always been connected with Sinatra's storyline,
Yeah.
including in the second episode of season 1. There's I feel like the first time we see her flashback, it opens with like her staring at a clock in the therapy session.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of throughout that episode about time, but
Hmm.
that is kind of put on the shelf. And now this season, it's like, let's bring this off.
Yeah.
Um, but I think just hopefully in episode 5, I just would like there to be no mention of time.
I don't think that's gonna happen. Maybe it'll be
We
mentioned, but there'll be some references.
I think they reached their limit in this
Yeah.
episode alone. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, we did, the Rob, thought that, Carmen did tell Sinatra, things are getting closer. So I'm paraphrasing, but and the Robbie, did take that picture of them and put a bug in it. So uh, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. The plan is still going.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That
Yeah.
whatever's happening, it still is being protected. Some people are on the in. Dr. Tharabi remains on the outside of that conversation,
Yeah.
but is weaseling her way into it.
Yep.
But all right, well, that is it for us. We are all caught up on season 2 of Paradise and will continue episode breakdowns for the rest of this month. We're also going to be starting One Piece season 2, so be on the lookout for that next week. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on all the socials. Drop your theories as far as what you think happened as well, and in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube or on our webpage if you're listening to us on the audio. At Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And please follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at SJ Belmont, SJBLMONT. Please follow our crew there at Scene and Nerd on Blue Sky. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and threads at scene_n_nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.